So today I'm just, this is just going to be a quick little video. We're not going to go too long. The idea here is just to try something a little bit different, try something live. And the idea behind this is I'm actually getting ready to go to church pretty soon. And sometimes what I do is I go out into a parking lot and then I just read my Bible before church. And today is ugly sweater day, so I got my ugly sweater on. And today basically we just at our church we just wear ugly sweaters, like the ugliest sweater that you can imagine, so that's why I have this on. And I thought I'd try something different, go live from my car. I'm just in the parking lot at just in Royal Oak here, and the idea is probably in about 20 minutes or so I'm going to take off to go to church. But I wanted to make this as a little bit of an announcement that in a few hours, 3 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, I will be going live with Pete Garcia. If you don't know who he is, just go to his channel. It's Rev 310. Go check out his channel. And we're going to have a good conversation. It's going to be just Pete and myself for who knows how long, maybe an hour, maybe 2 hours. But that should be fun. So this is one of the reasons why I wanted to go live, is I just didn't have enough time to edit it and all this kind of stuff. I just thought, you know what, let's just go live and let you guys know that we are going live at 3 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. And what time is that? So it's just after 9 o'clock my time right now. So we're looking at about 6 hours. So that should be pretty good. So that'll be fun. We had a great time last night. Josh and I at End Times Talk, he was on my channel last night, and we were talking about the drones, talking about holograms and all kinds of stuff. It was crazy. So go check out that episode from last night. Had a pretty good response. It was pretty fun. And we dove into the Bible a little bit. There's lots of scripture verses that hint at the idea that perhaps one day the earth is going to be bombarded, and we always lean on the side of aliens are always up to no good and all this stuff, but actually it is actually another subsection of an entity that is not of this world and is not from another world, another planet, but it is from heaven. So there are creatures that are bound up for a long time because they made a mistake. They had free will and they chose to go against God. And this is back in Genesis 6. And we know from, I think it's in Jude, I think it's hinted at in Jude, that these beings are actually locked up in chains somewhere below the earth. And then also, we know that the great river Euphrates is going to dry up. And then there's some angels as well. So, lots of stuff coming on, especially when you see all these drones. And I feel like this is one of those, I showed a video last night on our live stream about change blindness, and it's a thing. Change blindness is a thing. Most people can't handle more than 5 things at once. Like, you can't, it's too much. If you, let's say you have 10 objects in front of you, you're going to memorize 5 of those things, but you won't be able to keep track of which one of the 10 is missing, because you can only keep track of 5 at a time. You might go, okay, these 5, okay, different 5, got it. But if somebody were to swap that one thing out and put something in different right in front of your eyes, you won't be able to see it, because that's just the way we're wired. If you overload us with information, you can't pick up the things that are right in front of you that have either been swapped out, replaced, whatever it is, because there's so much stuff going on. So if you have all these drones and they're spreading outside of New Jersey, and then you have these things possibly show up in Europe, and then you have Russia with some of their top secret interballistic missiles that are, it almost looks like it's actually lightning strikes from heaven itself hitting towns. And there's no way to avoid that stuff. You don't hear them coming like a rocket or something. You can hear it and you can see it hit a building. The technology that they have, it's almost like it's vaporizing technology. And if you start showing images of that, you could start building a case saying that there was just a group of people that hang out in churches or different places that these aliens targeted and vaporized them, and they're gone. They're gone. And people would get scared. You don't need 80% of society to buy in. You need less than 20%. We've proven that with COVID. You only need a small percentage of people that are loud and crazy, and then people will start getting swayed, and then they start looking over their fences, looking at their neighbors, going, I don't know, man. I don't know if I can trust that neighbor. It's Christmas time, and they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Oh, that's too many people. That's illegal. That's illegal. And people were doing that. They were driving around to neighborhoods to rat them out. And our mayor of Calgary actually encouraged people to rat other people out, rat their neighbor out. It's like, be a good neighbor, keep track of who your neighbor is, and if you think they're doing something illegal at Christmas time by having friends or family from out of town celebrating, then call it in, phone it in. That was just for COVID. That was not anything like, this wasn't an invasion. You can argue it was perhaps an invasion, but like, it wasn't some foreign entity that was like making us do stuff. We were doing it to ourselves. We were doing it to ourselves. And it was almost like Oliver Twist, please, sir, can I have some more? And we were just turning on each other. So, anyways, this is interesting because I can actually see the comments right here. So good morning. Good morning, Barbie. Good morning, John. Good morning, Jesus is Coming. Great channel name. Great channel name. What else here? Can I swipe? Oh, yeah. Look at this. RH Steve. Good morning. NGTXX. Welcome. Great channel name. Watchwoman 87. It would be great if you had a broadcast about the flat earth. Oh, this is interesting. You know, obviously I'm not a scientist. But one thing that, when we talk about the flat earth, it gets so many people mad asking questions. And on YouTube, if you talk about the idea of flat earth or any concept or anything like this, YouTube will actually squash your videos down. So for me, it's like, why can't I ask questions? Why can't I be outside the box and just ask questions? Like, what's up with Antarctica? That would be my question. What is up with Antarctica? Why can't people legally just go below the 60th parallel? Why can't they do that? So when you start talking about the flat earth, it's like kicking a hornet's nest. It's so weird. If you talk about NASA, it's like kicking a hornet's nest if you say we never landed on the moon, which I don't believe we landed on the moon. I think that's probably one of my most conspiracy thoughts, is I just don't believe it. I don't believe it. I came from a broadcast school. I understand how we broadcast video, and there's no way you can broadcast video 250,000 kilometers from Earth without any beacons or any markers or any power stations or anything in space between here and the moon. You can't do it. If you start leaning on the idea that we could have landed on the moon, you're faced to confront the obvious, and that is that 99% of our internet videos, everything that we're transferring from one continent to another, one country to another, is all under the sea. It's not through satellites. So if we can't do it on Earth, what makes you think we can broadcast video instantaneously from the Earth to the moon. And that's what started my interest when people started saying about flat Earth, hey, based on this formula of the Earth starts to dip 1 inch every mile, I think it's something like that, the formula, why is it we can see farther than we can? And I'm like, yeah, why is it we can see farther than we can? And then you watch this video of a guy actually filming across, I forget what the bay is or whatever, to the Chicago skyline. And you could see images of all the buildings above the sea level. And then on the news that night, they're saying, no, guys, what you saw was actually an inversion. I don't know if I could do that with my phone, but it's called an inversion. You know, like when you stick a straw in the water and it goes at an angle like this? What happened with the Chicago skyline is it actually inverted. So all the buildings are upside down. So actually what you're seeing is an inversion of that from the water reflecting into the sky, and that's how come you can see all the buildings perfectly. And I'm like, okay, that's insanity right there. Answer those questions, like how come we can see farther? What's the big deal with Antarctica? Why all the secrecy behind Antarctica? You're actually feeding us conspiracy guys. Like if you want to just put this stuff to bed, just allow anyone to explore Antarctica. But the reason why anyone cannot explore Antarctica is over 96, I would argue 98% of Antarctica is uninhabitable in the darkest of winters. The darkest of winters. Uninhabitable, even as close to 99%. So in the summer, when the snow melts, you can actually go on these islands and you can actually have tours to the islands, guided tours to the islands. I've never argued with that. I never said it was impossible to get on to Antarctica. That's not my beef. My beef is it's too cold. And then people get mad and say, well, you're going to fall off the edge and all this stuff. And I'm like, who says there has to be an edge? And again, let's just pretend we're talking science fiction. If I were to design a movie based on this topic, you couldn't make a movie about it. You couldn't. But I could make a movie about Halo, about a planet that's like in the shape of a donut. I could make a movie about a planet with a cube, but you cannot make a movie about a planet that is flat. They won't let you. They won't, even if you say, I'm just making a science fiction movie. But you can have goblins, you can have all kinds of space movies, whatever it is, but you will never get the funding or anything to make a movie and just say it's a conspiracy movie. They won't let you. And if you talk about it, just saying, hey, why is it we can see farther? They're like, oh man, that's so dumb. That's so dumb. So how I approach things is I look at it and I'm like, why are the masses saying, and this is non-Christians, saying, drop it, drop the topic, don't talk about this stuff? That intrigues me. That intrigues me, the idea that you want to squash me. That's how I approach it. I'm like, okay, let's look at it scientifically. Let's look at the water levels and let's look at all this stuff. And the hardest thing for me, you know, if you're trying to look at all the flat earth stuff, is to reconcile the lunar eclipses and all that kind of stuff. So that is a huge argument for the world being round, being a globe and all this kind of stuff, because you got to wrestle with that stuff. That is very difficult. So for me, when I look at things, I look at everything. I just go, I don't care what anybody says. I don't care. I'm going to look at it and I'm going to say, okay, this is interesting. The idea that you can see farther, this is interesting. The idea that man cannot land on the moon, that's interesting to me. Antarctica, that is interesting. Why you can't just go on a tour to the South Pole. You can't just go on a tour to the South Pole unless you pay $50,000 to $100,000 American, and then you go like 1,000 kilometers inland. But what people don't know is that you're actually not really going to the South Pole. Why? Because they say it's because of the underground shifting of the ice, that you'll never know where the South Pole is. And they say because of the elements, it's too dangerous to actually go to the South Pole. So what we did is we actually made a marker that says this is the South Pole, and this is where you can take pictures and feel good about it, that you've actually went to the bottom of the earth. And then you can go back and tell your friends that you actually made it to the South Pole when in fact you didn't, because there is no South Pole. You can just keep going on, and it just gets colder and colder and colder and colder, and darkness and darkness and darkness. Just look at the book of Enoch. There's darkness on that side. It gets so cold that it becomes inhabitable. You can't live in Antarctica. You can't do it. You can live on the island in little sheds and stuff. That's fine. You can have your little bases on the island in the summertime, but in the wintertime, you cannot. You have to have a remote base with maybe 20, 30 people. That's it. You're not going to have any tourists because you got to get past Drake's Passage, which is horrible. On South America, I think it's South America, where basically Drake's Passage is. And if you try and get there, you can take tour ships and all this kind of stuff, but you have to be guided there through the Drake's Passage, and it's not easy to get through. It's not easy to get through there. Then once you land, you can do kayaking, you can do all kinds of stuff on Antarctica on the edge. And you got to contend with at least 200-foot ice walls. And how long do they go on? Well, they go on for thousands of kilometers in either direction. Thousands of kilometers. So if you wanted to take a ship, and let's just say you don't believe anything about Antarctica being crazy or whatever, you would take a ship along these ice walls that are 200 plus feet. And don't forget, they go 1,800 meters below the sea level as well. So you're risking your life by going along each side of the border, where let's say you dock at an island and you say, I'm going to go this way and I'm going to try and get inland. You can't, because the walls are all 200 feet. So you can't go there unless you have a helicopter. And if you have a helicopter, you can only do that in the summer months. You can only take a plane in the summer months, and the maximum amount that you can go in is a certain distance, because you have to turn around and go back. There are no tours. Think about this. There are no tours in Antarctica that allow you to go from an island on the coast to the South Pole and then to the other side. They always bring you back to where you started. Why? Because you can't get across. And that's what I mean. All this stuff feeds conspiracy people, right? They just feed us. Drones, all this stuff. And if you wanted to put it to bed, just have a tour from one end to the other. But they don't do that because they say it's not safe because of the weather. So what we want you to do is, we have a false site, and they'll tell you this. It's not actually the South Pole, but it's a false site. And this is where you can take pictures because we feel it's safe for us to be able to make it back. So that should say something. That should make you ask more questions. Asking more questions is not wrong. And I think this is where science gets it wrong. If you have an opposing view, they just say you're an idiot because you ask questions. But they can't answer stuff. Instead, what they do is they make fun of you. They make fun of you and they say, oh, there's tours all over the place in Antarctica. They're lying. There's only a couple of places that you can actually take a tour, because they need you to dock at a certain area in order to protect you. You can't land anywhere else than these ports because, again, there's 200-foot walls that you have to deal with, and you have to deal with some of the worst seas that you have ever come across. There's ships that have gone down, and these guys are masters at sailing, and they went down. They got stuck. They got stranded. Do that a few times, and it'll shake your nerves. Like there's something else going on there. It's a $50,000 fine for littering below the 60th parallel. It's a $50,000 fine. So if you're in a boat and they're taking you to shore and you eat a box of jujubes or something and you throw it over, little plastic wrap, it's a $50,000 fine American. You could face jail time. So they're overly sensitive on anything, any scientific data, any experiments done. It has to be approved on every single level. There's nobody flying over Antarctica, period. Nobody flies over it. They say it, but it's not true because it's not safe. It's not safe to fly over Antarctica because if you break down, nobody's going to come and get you. It's different if you land on one of the islands where they have makeshift airports for these little planes. That's different. You can land there in the summer. Every year you can do that. But you can't go inland. You can't go as far as you want to go. And again, just look up Antarctica tours. They will tell you, here's a tour to the South Pole. It's between $50,000 and $100,000 American, most likely plus. And it's always a return trip. So you start off on a camp and then you go in. They can fly you in, whatever, to another base, and then you trek about 1,000 kilometers in to or 1,000 miles in, and you go to a false South Pole and take your pictures and everything, and all the nations are gathered around, all their flag, whatever, and then you leave. And then you go back to the camp because they make you leave your stuff there. And that's where you got to go back because that's the safest route. They don't take you straight across because you would think, logically, it's the same distance when you go to the South Pole to go right across. And they're like, no, it's not safe. It's not safe. And we can never really find the South Pole because of all the shifting underground, the ice, everything like that. So stop asking us if you're really at the South Pole because you'll never really get to the South Pole. This is according to the people that are taking tourists to Antarctica. They will tell you themselves that it's not true. It's not the true South Pole because we can't get to it because it's not safe. It's not safe for you, so stop asking to go to the real South Pole. That's how they phrase it. So that's the craziness. Obviously, when you see ships taking off on the ocean and then you use a camera that zooms in, all of a sudden they come back and all this kind of stuff. It's more because I'm not a scientist. I just go, this just breeds more questions. It just breeds more questions. The one thing I will stand on for myself personally is I don't know about the flat earth, the globe, all that stuff, but I do feel in my soul of souls that we did not go to the moon. And unless they can prove it to me, they lost all the original footage. They lost it all. That's gone. They erased all the footage. They don't have any original footage of any of the film landings. If anything, it's all digital copies. And that's it. But they don't have any of the original stuff. And they never quite explain how they got to the moon. And then instead they'll say things like, oh, we forgot, we don't have the technology today. It's too hard to get past the Van Allen belt, all this kind of stuff. Then you have to wrestle in the Bible with the firmament. You have to wrestle with that and go, okay, what is this firmament that's been smashed out in heaven? And how thick is this firmament? Because it sure looks like the stars are inside the firmament. So you have to ask these questions, and most people will just be like, no, I don't care. This doesn't bother me. I don't want to talk about it, which is fine. But some people like talking about it. Some people like asking questions, and some people don't. So I don't trust anything that NASA pumps out. I don't trust anything. And I think that's where the conspiracy starts with, is once they start lying to you a couple of times, then you start looking around at everything. Like, what is truth? Like when it comes to drones, what are they trying to do? Is it because they don't know what it is? That's where all this stuff comes from. So never get mad at people asking questions. I think it's always good to ask questions. It doesn't matter if you believe it or don't believe it. Ask questions, and then you can get to the answer the more questions you ask. But if you shut people down because they're asking questions, there's something wrong with that. And that's what YouTube does. It shuts people down that ask questions. And it's getting harder and harder to talk about whatever topic you want to talk about. But if you want to talk about terrorism, if you want to talk about protesting against Israel or against Gaza and see horrible acts, no problem. You can find that on YouTube all the time. But as soon as you start talking about science, questioning the medical field, the medical industry, talk about science, all of a sudden your channel gets squished. And you got to ask yourself, why is this happening? Why are they squishing you? If it's not a topic or if it's not anything of importance, what's the harm in talking about the medical industry to people? What's the harm in doing that? Why squish it? What's the harm in talking about whether or not we went to the moon or any subject? What's the harm in that if you're just talking? So I know that's a long question, but again, I'm not a scientist. I've never been up high enough to be able to see the curvature of the earth. And obviously I haven't seen the edge where people drop off, because that's not what I believe at all. I don't believe that there's an edge. As people automatically say, as soon as you say, when we're talking about flat earth, as soon as you talk about it, it's like, okay, they're falling off the edge. I'm like, no, who said there's an edge? It's infinite. Just read the book of Enoch, and it describes darkness. The further out you go is darkness. And that seems to match with what heaven is, and it seems to match the oceans, and it seems to match the depth of the earth, because they don't even know what's at the center of the earth's core. And yet we're studying all these planets out in space, but you don't even know what's at the center of Earth's core, because one, we've never been there, and we don't have instruments to be able to measure that. Talk to any decent engineer, he'd say, yeah, the most we can go is maybe 6 miles, 7 miles deep. That's it. And the most we can go is about 6 miles high. That's about it. And you'll get guys like Neil deGrasse Tyson that will say the universe is actually flat. The universe is flat. And when you're to look at the surface of Earth, it looks flat to you. This is what Neil Tyson is saying, the scientist that everybody here respects. I don't, but you do. And he says the universe is flat, and the Earth itself is like a cue ball, where basically you can't even tell. If you're an alien from outer space looking at the Earth, you would think it was flat. That's him saying that, because the mountains aren't very high and the oceans aren't very deep. When you look at it, when you're looking at the total circumference of the Earth, it looks flat. And Neil Tyson is saying the universe is flat, meaning the further out you go in either direction, north, south, east, west, it flattens out. That's him saying that. That's not me. I never said I'm a scientist or an astrophysicist. That's Neil Tyson saying that he's a scientist and he knows everything. So he's saying the universe is flat. How come nobody's mad at him for saying the universe is flat? It's crazy, right? Anyways, there's my little rant. But what I like to do is I like asking a lot of questions. This is why my channel is called The Black Swan, is because I will also get guests on my channel talking about things I may not necessarily agree with all the time, but I'm going to hear them. I had William on the other day talking about post-tribulation a few weeks ago, a month ago or whenever. And I don't believe in post-tribulation. I believe in pre-trib rapture. But I'm going to have him on and listen to him, just like I wasn't 100% understanding everything that Stuart was mentioning a couple of days ago on Joel, talking about the medical industry and locusts and cankerworms and all this stuff. But I'd have to do my due diligence, and I was just asking him questions about. He thinks that the rapture is going to happen anytime. I think it's going to happen anytime. I think it's imminent. But could it be a month, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months? Yes, it could be. It could be a year from now. Don't know when. But he was pretty adamant that it's pretty close, like very, very close. So I don't mind listening to that stuff. I don't mind having people that have done some due diligence on the book of Joel, and I don't mind hearing them and asking them questions because I think that is reasonable. And if you mention things like, for example, I don't believe the third temple will ever get built. That's my opinion. And I could back it up with scripture, but I'm not going to get mad at people that say, no, 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 Shane, we need to support the Temple Institute and give them money so that they could start practicing animal sacrifice in Jerusalem. I'm like, well, knock yourself out. That's up to you. I don't have to do that. I don't have to believe that. I can back it up in scripture that there will not be a third temple. So you can get mad, or you can listen to what I'm saying and then go and do your due diligence yourself. Just like if you believe that 100% there's going to be a third temple, then I'm willing to have you on my channel and explain it to me why you personally believe that there will be a third temple. And we can have a conversation back and forth. Why? Because you can't do this stuff normally on a Sunday morning. It's very difficult. There's not enough time to unpack it. You can't do this in church where you have somebody say, I believe in the rapture, it's imminent, and talk about it for 30 to 40 minutes to an hour. It's very difficult. It's very difficult. Or you can't have someone that comes in and says, hey, I believe in pre-trib or post-trib rapture, or talk about the temple, or the medical industry, or NASA, or politics. You can't do that on a Sunday morning. It's just very difficult. But on YouTube, you can spend hours talking about whatever subject that is your fancy. And for me, I talk a lot about Black Swan events. A lot. And I'm always looking for the next Black Swan. If you don't like that, then you go to another channel that maybe reviews Friends. Maybe they talk about the anniversary of Friends and talk about all their favorite scenes. Go to that channel and you get what you pay for, kind of thing. But on my channel, we talk a lot. We're very heavy on end times, very heavy on the rapture, very heavy on what's coming down the pipes with Jacob's trouble and what that means for the planet. Because when we're not here, they're going to want to see this stuff. They're going to want to see these videos. They're going to want to see stuff in your home, Bibles, notes on the fridge saying, hey, we weren't abducted by aliens or whatever. It was actually the rapture, all this kind of stuff. So that's what this channel is for. And we talk about everything. You guys know that. We talk about giants. We talk about aliens. We talk everything. Talk about pre-flood, post-flood, pre-trib, post-trib. Like this is what we do on this channel. And we have panelists, we have guests. Again, this afternoon I'm gonna be talking with Pete Garcia about what's going on. He has a little bit of a military background, so this will be an interesting discussion. Don't forget to join us, and hopefully that makes sense. Let's just go to some of the questions here. Man, my arm is getting sore. All right, let's see here. Are these drones a Black Swan event? The only reason why it feels like it could be a Black Swan event is because, one, we didn't see it coming. But in order for it to be a true Black Swan event, it has to be a game changer for the world. Like, you have to look at the world a little bit different than you did the day before. So that's part of the criteria. There's three criteria, if you will, in regards to a Black Swan. Is it has to be a world interrupter, a global interrupter. It has to interrupt everybody almost overnight. Financially, it has to interrupt sectors. And also, you can't see it coming. People have been talking about drones and all this kind of stuff, but not at this magnitude, not just hovering. That's just a failure in the defense of the U.S. The second criteria is it's highly improbable, and you don't know that you're in it. The Black Swan. That's part of the whole idea. The DNA of a Black Swan is you don't know you're in it until you're out of it, and that's the third criteria. The third criteria is that you can explain it away. You have the ability to look at all the breadcrumbs and you justify why you knew it was going to happen after the effect. That is the DNA residue of a black swan event, is that you can explain it away. You can say, oh, they should have saw Pearl Harbor happen because the Japanese were struggling with oil prices and they needed more oil, so this is why they did it. It made complete sense. Or they wanted to catch US by surprise in order to run the Pacific, and we start explaining it away. 9/11, oh, it was an inside job, the government did it, we should have saw it coming, all this kind of stuff. But nobody was talking about it the day before. That's the problem. Or even the morning of, nobody was saying, these buildings are pretty high. I wonder how hard it would be to capture an airline and crash it into one of these buildings. Nobody thought about it. And if somebody did think about it, they would have been ostracized. They would have been kicked out. So if somebody came up with an idea and said, you know what? This would have been like, let's say, September 2010. If somebody had said, or 2000, I should say, if somebody had said, hey, you know what? It's actually not a bad idea to actually, why don't we just lock all the doors, lock the pilots in so nobody can ever take over the plane? And what if randomly we put a marshal on a plane in civilian clothes and nobody would know? What would that do? Well, Shane, that would cost you a lot of money and you're fired. So please don't let the door hit you on the way out, because the airline industries barely make any money and that's going to cost way too much money. So we're going to have to ask you to leave. And that's what would happen. And that guy would only be a hero if they implemented the plan, but nobody would know he's a hero. So instead, after September 11th, the heroes were the police and the firefighters. Why? Because they went in after the black event. And everybody thought this was going to happen again. That's another phenomenon that happens with a black swan event, is you think it's going to happen every single day. So, are these drones in New Jersey a black swan? There are symptoms of a black swan, because now people are going, could this happen here in Calgary? Could this happen in California? Could this happen in Phoenix? Could this happen in our state? Once you start thinking that could happen, even though that's not the nature of a black swan doesn't happen over and over and over again. That's not a black swan. But part of the DNA residue of a black swan is the idea that people think black swans happen every day after that. So let's just say, for example, Pearl Harbor, again, on December, I think it was December 7th, the day of infamy. After that, the U.S. thought that they were going to be attacked again by Japan on December 8th, December 9th, December 10th, all over North America. I should say all over the United States and all over Canada. Why? Because we were locking up Japanese citizens, because we thought this could happen here, happen again. 9/11, everybody thought another plane was going to happen the next day on September 12th and September 13th, September 14th, all this stuff. Is why do you think they shut down all the airports in America? They didn't want it to happen again. They thought what could happen in New York can happen all over the U.S., even though New York was a black swan event. But they were worried, so then they go overboard and they sent all the planes to Canada. And I'm like, when that happened, I was like, why are you sending your planes to Canada? And why is our airports allowing planes to land if they're not safe, if they have terrorists? It didn't make any sense to me. But that's what happens during a black swan, is you overreact. So I am waiting for an overreaction to these drones, where people start shooting at them. They start trying to take these things down, blowing them up, planes. I don't know why we don't see helicopters out more. I've heard that these drones have actually evaded helicopters. Whenever they approach them, they turn their lights out and they disappear. So that's kind of the next wave that I would expect. If this is a black swan event, you have to change the markets to make things safe. You have to make transactions different. So let's just say today is Sunday. Let's say Monday, something comes out like martial law because it's not safe now. I can see that being a reaction to these drones, because if we're leaning down the side of the drones being a black swan potential event, the next thing to happen is an overreaction to fix that problem. And the overreaction could be a lockdown starting Monday or starting tonight at midnight or whatever. And you just have martial law. And what does that mean? Well, theoretically, it wouldn't stop Donald Trump from coming into office, but that could delay things. Like, you're not supposed to call martial law on an incoming president. Like, the idea behind it is they would have to consult with the incoming president to make sure that martial law is okay, because he's basically the president. He just has to get sworn in, I think, on January 20th. So I think they're past that point of no return where Trump goes into the office no matter what. No matter what, even if there is martial law. But with regards to these drones, if we're sticking with the idea that potentially this could be a black swan event, the next stage is it has to interrupt business as not being normal anymore. It has to interrupt that. Maybe you don't go to the grocery stores. Maybe there's a timeout in the financial industry. Don't know. But that's usually what happens in a black swan event, is an overreaction. So that's what I'm looking for in the next week, is an overreaction to what's going on with the drones. New laws get passed, something that is crazy, that actually takes away some of your freedoms, because you don't want these drones to ever go over your space again, over your city. So an overreaction will actually restrict people. That's what I'm expecting in the next couple of days. Like, I'm not expecting this to be like months or years down the road. I'm thinking like Monday they're going to have a press conference and say, here's what we're doing. We're actually locking down neighborhoods only from 8 o'clock at night till 2 in the morning, because we don't think it's safe for you to go outside. So if you start doing that for a period of time, people will get used to staying home again. And then if you introduce the bird flu and all this kind of stuff that's going on, and it's interesting that there's a bit of a bird flu bug going on in Phoenix, which is where I actually went to that zoo in October. I was actually there. It was actually quite an amazing zoo. But they're saying birds have actually landed in that zoo, and they're detecting bird flu virus type symptoms. And this could be another beginnings of another black swan event as well, because you would never think that they would start from a zoo in Phoenix. So that's interesting in itself. So that's coming down the pipes, and we know they're trying to push this stuff on us again. We know this. They're trying to push it hard. They're trying to get us in our homes, all this kind of stuff. So I just look at it from, is this a potential black swan? What are the symptoms? What can happen? Overreaction. That's the biggest thing. It's an overreaction is the next natural step to make this a black swan event. It happened with Pearl Harbor because the U.S. went into the war, even though, like, if you're going with that idea that they're basically bankrupt, Japan is bankrupt, then the Battle of Iwo Jima, I think that was where they actually destroyed 4 of the Japanese carriers. That should have ended the war right there. If you believe that Japan was in a financial crisis and they didn't have enough money for oil, and you crippled their carrier fleet, there was no reason for, I think it was Doolittle, to do a raid on Tokyo with bombers and to drop an atomic bomb in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. That's overkill, overreaction. Why? Because of the black swan in 1942 or whenever that was, December 7th. An overreaction for 9/11 is they went to Afghanistan and then to Iraq because they said Iraq is the culprit. We got weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. That's an overreaction from a black swan event. You can go on and on. That's the DNA residue from a black swan event, that there's an overreaction, an overstimulus to compensate for it. And that's what I think is going to happen probably this week sometime. That would be my guess. All right, so let's see here what anyone is saying. This is kind of fun. I think this is kind of fun to be able to just sit back and chill. Drones are part of the show. They know what's going on. If they read the Bible, it's all part of the plan. Ran over Rev 12 this morning. Rev 12 really explains what is about to go down. I believe these drones are American. I was reading Habakkuk this morning as well, and man, there's some verses, and I think it's Habakkuk, where it's talking about the burden of Nineveh. If you read that book, it only takes you 5 minutes to read Habakkuk, and you insert Nineveh with New York City, chariots on fire, flaming chariots taking out all the streets of Broadway. This is in Habakkuk. You could build a case that New York is next. New York is in trouble after New Jersey. Like, you can start looking at it, like if you're looking at it from a future prophetic lens. I think there's so much history in New York and New Jersey that some type of judgment is coming down, and I don't know if that's these angels, these crazy angels, whatever it is that's going on with the drones, holograms, all this kind of stuff. But if I were to guess timelines, I would say December 31st is going to be the craziest evening ever. Craziest evening, because why? What happens? A lot of people flock to New York City on Christmas Eve to celebrate American history, to celebrate going into the new year, and you party like never before on New Year's Eve. So I think in a couple of weeks, I expect something big to shake out over New York City as well, that maybe, just maybe, will force people to shut down in New York City, and there won't be any end times or any Times Square celebration. That's just kind of a guess. Because again, after reading Habakkuk, you're like, man, this sure looks like New York City. Sure looks like what's going on here. Like, there's all kinds of crazy financial history, all kinds of stuff in New York, tied in with New Jersey as well. I talked about Tesla. I talked about Thomas Edison, all his inventions, trying to figure out time travel, all kinds of stuff. That's what we talked about a little bit last night. So anyways, lots of stuff going on. Lots of stuff. Great day to be alive, because you can see all this stuff going on right before your very eyes, and it almost feels like the Bible just jumps out at you. So I'm just looking at some of the comments here. They are not all drones as we know them. I believe that as well. Like, I showed a little video yesterday on change blindness. Again, the idea that you can insert something amongst things that are real. And I think that's what's going on right now. Holograms mixed in with real drones, mixed in with real weapons that come from space. You would cause such a panic. You don't need to hit all of North America at once. You just need to hit one city, and you're going to cause a panic throughout the nation. It's crazy. Let's see. Yeah, I love Rob Skiba. Miss him. He was a good guy from Winnipeg, another Canadian. He had some interesting things to say about Nephilim. Talked a lot about Nephilim, talked a lot about Noah's flood and all that kind of stuff. So I respect a lot of his teachings, and it was very sad to see him go. All I have is swans in white. Thanks, Gary. Let's see here. Live our lives as if Christ comes tomorrow, or else we might die and see him sooner. Yeah, like, there's two things that we could be sure of. One is we don't know when we're going to die. And the second thing is we don't know when the Lord is going to come back for his church. We don't know when that day is. So I do my best to live like today is my last day. Today is my last day. Not in a morbid sense, to be unlifed. It's such a weird saying. But to just live it to the fullest. And that doesn't mean like Ecclesiastes where you just eat, drink, be merry, and then die. No, it's basically focusing on the Lord today and treating people nicer than yourself, like being kind to people, loving on people, loving your enemies, all that kind of stuff, and sharing the gospel. Because I don't know where I'm going to be tomorrow. I don't. And I don't know if the Lord is going to come back tonight. I don't. I'm not a prophet that way. I don't know when when Jesus is going to come. I can guess, but I don't know. I don't know. And I think sometimes after you have pizza or McDonald's, sometimes I think you can be pretty accurate. Like, man, I kind of feel like I'm lifing myself because my tummy's not feeling very good. It's not feeling very good right now. So let's see what else here. Yeah, Habakkuk is interesting. They said the people who commanded the plane was from Syria, not Iraq. Yeah, I know. That's what I mean. It was an overreaction to go into Iraq and look for weapons of mass destruction when a lot of people are like, hey, Iraq wasn't, the Iranians weren't the ones, or sorry, the Iraqians weren't the ones that caused the damage. It was from Afghanistan. Bin Laden's from Afghanistan. The Bushes would have known he's from Afghanistan, but they overreacted. And that's what I think is going to happen with regards to these drones. After that, Satan throws his losing fallen angels to the earth, and then it's really nasty. Yeah, and it's almost like he didn't have too much of a choice. Like there's two verses. One is, yes, he uses a third of the angels to go after the children of the woman, which we know is Israel. And then she has a man-child, which I believe is the raptured church, that goes straight up to God's throne. And then the devil gets so mad he persecutes the woman's children, persecutes them, and it gets to a point where later, after Revelation 10, when an angel shouts out, "There's time no more," like that's it for time. That the devil and a third of his angels actually get kicked out. Why? They lose the war in heaven. They run, they flee, they get beaten in heaven by Michael and his angels. And when they come to earth, they're like, oh man, I forgot something. I forgot my wallet in heaven. I forgot my luggage. The devil tries to go back up to heaven and he cannot. What does that tell you? That tells you he's now bound by time. Before that, he was outside of time, meaning he could time travel. I know it sounds science fiction-y, right? But when you think about it, heaven is actually outside of time. We are locked in time. We're mortal. The devil now becomes locked in time. That's why it says that he knows his time is short. He is now aware of the concept of time. Crazy, man. Crazy times. All right, let's see what else here. John talks about what got Lucifer and his angels cast out of their heaven in the beginning. Yep. Jesus said, I saw Satan fall like lightning. Michael, and remember, the devil has always wanted to have his throne above God's throne. Let's see what else we got here. What else do we got here? December 20th, they're having legislative buildings about drones, which is 5 days from now, changing the laws so that they have the right to people flying them or not. Fear, compromise, control. Yep. So that's the overreaction. They're going to start changing the laws and the rules, and most likely by Friday it'll be done. And then next week will be a whole new week for you guys in America. You'll be like, man, The Black Swan said this was going to happen, that we're all going to get shut up in our homes, but we didn't believe him. We didn't believe him. World Seed Bank in the Antarctic, and only a few privileged are allowed beyond the doors. Yep. Let's talk about it in the clouds for sure. Love to do that. Good morning, Cindy. Let's see. Man, lots of people on this morning. Crazy, crazy. All right. So, yeah. So, in 4 hours, I'm going to be going live with Pete Garcia. So, this is kind of fun. I kind of, yeah, thank you. It's ugly sweater day in church this morning. So, everybody has to pick their ugliest sweaters. So, yeah. So, end times on nice sweatshirt, bro. Yeah. What can I say? It's ugly sweater day at our church, so you got to pick the ugliest sweater and wear it. It's crazy, right? Praise my God. What else do we got here? I thought it was cool, not ugly. I know. I actually think it's kind of cool. It's got a little bow tie, all this stuff. I'm not a tie guy because my neck is too big. It's too strong. I can't wear ties. I cannot wear ties. I don't like being constrained. I don't like neckties at all. So you'll rarely see me in a suit and a tie. You might see a dress shirt once in a while, but mostly t-shirts, sweaters. That's kind of what I like to wear. This message is held for review. Ooh, somebody's message got held for review. I didn't do it. See what I mean? YouTube is starting to crack down. It doesn't take very long. You just say flat earth, and all of a sudden YouTube is going to start squashing my channel. Just watch it. It's crazy, man. You don't even have to agree with anything. You could say, yeah, I don't agree with flat earth. Your channel will still get squashed. It's because you mentioned the unmentionable. That should tell you alone what kind of time we're in when you can't even speak. And again, to foreshadow a little bit of what's coming down the pipes, Agent Smith said that to Neo in The Matrix. When you see his driver's license, Neo was born on September 11th, 2001. It's kind of interesting on his driver's license. And Neo says, what will a phone call do for you if you cannot speak? Meaning, one day we won't be able to share our thoughts. And it won't be because of government. It'll be because people will make fun of you and try and get you shut down by calling your channel, they'll write a letter to Google. They'll say, this person hurt my feelings because he doesn't like NASA, so we don't want his video anymore. And you'll be shut down. Just like that. It's crazy. People are so sensitive to have a intellectual conversation with other people. They're so sensitive. Why do you think Jordan Peterson moved to America? It's because people in Toronto, Canadians, harassed him constantly. He did not feel safe and decided to move with his family to the United States. And he's an Alberta boy, like myself. And he got ostracized, basically, and he said, you know what, it's not safe for me to live in Canada. Crazy, right? Yeah, so I think if I were to live anywhere, I think it would be Phoenix, if I were, but, you know, we work here in Canada. My wife works here in Canada, but my daughter's in Phoenix. Maybe if my other kids move to Phoenix, maybe. But not if there's a flu virus going on in Phoenix. You guys got to take care of that stuff. You got to take care of that stuff in the zoo. Let's see, with the watchdog. Yeah, I like making fun of my French friend. Because as you know, you have to study. Study. It's funny when he was talking about cheeseburgers the other day. I was going to say hamburger, cheeseburger, burger. I was going to bug him, but he may not like that if I bug him about cheeseburgers. Let's see, out of time. Good channel name, out of time. That's amazing, but what I do not understand is the shape of the earth does not determine salvation. For sure, 100%, it does not. And that's why you got to wonder, why are people getting so mad? If it's not a salvation issue, why do you get mad when people talk about it? It's weird, right? I can listen to people talk about what they think is going on Jupiter and Saturn and all this stuff, and they're like, look at this, and you could see that one time they had water and now it's all clouds and gas, and we know what's actually on the surface and all this kind of stuff. And I'll just sit there and I'm like, okay. And they just go on and on, like they're just like, man, I can't wait to live underground on Mars. It's going to be so amazing that we can build underground bunkers on Mars and live there for hundreds of years before we can get oxygen on the planet's surface of Mars. That's going to be so much fun. And meanwhile, I'm looking around going, but you have beaches in Mexico that you can go hang out on, and you can read a book, and you just go into the ocean, kayak, and you want to go to Mars to live underground for 2 or 3 generations? And Elon's not going to lead the way. You're going to go by yourself, and he's going to pat you on the shoulder, put you in one of his ships and say, good luck, Godspeed, hope you make it. And you're okay with that? And yet you got all these beautiful mountains around. You have oceans to explore. You have all this stuff to explore on Earth. But you want to go to Mars, and you talk about it endlessly, enviously. You're like, oh, I just want to go to Mars so bad. I want to go to Jupiter. I wonder what's under Jupiter. And yet scientists and engineers don't even know what's under the Earth's surface. They don't even know what's at the core of the Earth. They've never been there. They don't have equipment to be able to detect what's actually going on below the Earth's surface. They don't do it. How do we know this? Because they can't even deal with these drones that are like 400 feet above us. So you think they know what's going on below the Earth? They do not. They do not. And I had a reputable engineer that was basically responsible for drilling offshore and all kinds of stuff. And he says, yeah, we don't know what's at the center of the core. It could be lava. It could be molten rock. It could be, we don't know. It could be water for all we know. We have no idea because we don't have the technology to go there. And that's him saying it. It's not me. I just thought we could. I thought we can burrow through the Earth and get to the other side. I thought we can do that, but we can't. Go talk to any legitimate scientist and they'll say we don't have the ability to go past 7 miles in the Earth. It will never happen with our current technology. We can't do it. It doesn't make any sense. So stop trying to dig deeper than 7 miles. And you'll even get silly people from NASA saying we can't get past that Van Allen belt. And I'm like, dude, you're working for NASA. You're not working for me. Stop saying that stuff. Stop saying you lost all the telemetry data. Stop saying you lost all the footage from all the lunar landings and you accidentally erased them. Stop saying you can't get past the Van Allen belt. Stop saying it's so complicated. Because Elon's going to Mars and you can't get to the moon? Why Mars? People don't ask enough questions. That's the problem. Let's see, William Shatner's reaction going up. The rocket was, hell no. That was a bad idea. Yeah, it was probably like, oh, so it is flat? It's probably what his reaction was because he was pretty quiet after. And just look at Neil Armstrong and those boys, the other boys, Buzz Aldrin, and who was the other guy? I forget what the other guy's name. Look at their interview after they landed back on Earth. Watch people win the pennant in the United States or win the Stanley Cup or win the Super Bowl ring. And then watch these astronauts that are on Earth now and they're being interviewed. What did you see? What did the stars look like? And you're like, stars? I didn't see any stars. Did you see stars? Why are you asking me? Why are you putting all the blame on me, bruh? I did not see stars either. You know that because we weren't there. So stop asking me the hard questions. And they're like, yeah, it was the most fun that I ever had in my life. I would highly encourage people to go to the moon. Am I done now? That was their demeanor. Those did not look like rock stars or people that have just won a gold medal. You see those people, they're crying. They're like, oh man. It's just all they would say is, it's unbelievable. There's no stars. We couldn't see anything, but it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. Why do they keep saying that? Because it is unbelievable. They didn't go. What else is there? Monday is a great podcast about the biblical truth. Awesome. You can't be, let's see, but you can't be past age 65, so I don't know if you're qualified to know. So that's age, yeah, I'm 55. I know liars, though. I know liars. They lost the technology to go to the moon. Yes, look it up. They lost the telemetry data. They accidentally erased all the footage, all the original film, lost or erased all the original film in regards to the lunar landings. They say this themselves. NASA says it themselves. It's not me making it up. They say it. So, and if they have a problem with the Van Allen belt, which I didn't know that was a thing, because in the 60s you guys had no problem going through the Van Allen belt. No problem at all. But now it's a thing that you bring up, and this is NASA talking about this stuff. This is not me. They're saying it, that they can't get through the Van Allen belt, that they don't have the technology to do it. Isn't that interesting when you see the contrary with Elon, the richest guy on the planet, saying it is possible to go to Mars and all these other stuff, and there's no sign of alien life, period. It's so bizarre, some of his statements. Losing the film, America's not ready to know what's out there. Yeah, it's probably I probably just run into a firmament, and that's it. There's a great broadcast about the Earth, 3 hours talking about all the problems. However, it is in Spanish. Yeah, I lose it when I can't figure out a documentary if it's just in Spanish. No burn marks on that. Yeah, that's interesting. The vehicle from the moon. Mars is a Roman god of war. Yeah, like, we're not scientists, but it feels like something is afoot when you talk about the lunar landings and all that stuff. It's crazy. It's crazy. I did enough digging that went, yeah, these guys don't know what they're talking about. They have no idea. Like, we're just learning how to park cars now by themselves. And you're telling me it was again, anytime you say something, somebody combats it with something that they heard someone say. But if you just use logic and you just say, look, they had no GPS on their ship, because in order to have GPS, you need to have all these different towers and all this, so you can triangulate things. They had none of that stuff on the moon. So they're going blind to the moon. They're going blind. And they can't see out of their ship. That's another problem. So then when they land, they're able to communicate with video. Can't even say via satellite, because there was no satellites in space. It would have been easier to believe that they set up satellites all the way to the moon first, and that took 10 years. I can buy that. But they had none of that stuff. And they were interacting with Nixon instantaneously. And you can argue with me and say, Shane, they edited that to make it look like it was instantly. Okay, fine. But they let it go. Why not just have the raw footage? I don't want it edited. I want to hear Neil Armstrong say it was a step for mankind, whatever. I want to hear him say, how are you, Mr. President? And I want 6 minutes of blank. And then I want Nixon to say, wow, that was a long time for you to get back to me. Everything is fine on Earth. How is it on the moon? And then I want another 6 minute delay. But they're not saying that. They cut it So it's instantaneously back and forth. How you doing, President? I'm doing good. How are you doing? I'm doing great. Moon's fantastic. Like, yeah, there should have been a delay. Why? Because if you see a correspondent in Israel, there's like a delay. How are you? How are things today? Well, things are a little shaky. And what's happening right now in New York? And you'll see the person go, New York is okay. There's a delay. That's on Earth. Add 250,000 kilometers through space. Then you begin to hear all the made-up stories of how that works. They can't figure it out. They're just playing around. Weight, smallest camera would be Super 8. Every pound you put on a rocket has a large dollar. Well, there is no weight in space, so we have to cancel that out. But what's interesting is they all had to film like this, and I got to take off pretty soon. They all film like this. So imagine this. I would never film anything like this with my phone. I use my eyes to do this. So they could have put something in front of their helmet like this if they wanted to make sure, but they didn't. So their film camera was like this. I think it was 8mm, like this. So there, and everything was in focus. You don't see any shaky cam. You don't see anything. All the photos are perfect. And you might say, well, they only gave you the best stuff. Well, we want to see some of the raw stuff. I want to see them turn 360 degrees, but they don't do that stuff. All you see is them bouncing around on wires, falling down and trying to get up. You could see the wires. Like, eventually you're going to have to say this is a hoax, because look at all the wires all over these guys as they're bouncing around, and none of it made sense. It's silly. It's just silliness. Yeah, exactly. No space, it's water. Yes. So again, when you deal with the firmament, you have to deal with the waters above and the waters below. Below what? Below the earth. So there's waters above the firmament, which is called heaven, and then there's waters below the earth as well. You have to contend with that stuff. You can't just ignore it. How did they launch from Earth? I don't know what the question is. Like, sometimes it's hard to read tone. Like, are you saying it from what I mentioned about, I'm not sure what the question is, out of time. Water under Earth, yes. Like, I'm not saying that they didn't launch. I'm saying whenever you watch them launch, they're always going like this. And if you argue with them and say, why didn't you just go straight up? They'll be like, no, we got to go around the Earth a few times to get enough speed worked up. Even though the Earth is going 66,666 miles an hour, you got to work up that velocity so that when you get to the moon, you can go like this around, and then you have, what's his name, Buzz Aldrin waiting while you land on the moon, and then you got to get back up and find that ship and eyeball it, because you only have an eyepiece like this to actually dock, and then turn around and then take off back to Earth. Like, it's too much, guys. It's too much after a while. They're crazy. Let's see. Man, that's the broadcast. Yeah, they basically rebroadcast it through television equipment so that they could broadcast it live. And it's like, even that, you're losing quality. Anybody that's in the broadcast industry would understand that if you start transferring from one copy to the next, you're losing a generation, and you want the most crisp, original source to begin with. Why do you think they made duplicates of Star Wars? The film was starting to get eaten up. It was starting to crumble, so they had to make copies of the original footage so that they wouldn't lose the footage. So if it was important to George Lucas, why wasn't it important to NASA to start making copies the second they landed on Earth, and put one set of copies in the museum in Russia and another set of copies in Israel and then another set somewhere else, like they do with the Bible, like the Septuagint? I think it's in St. Petersburg in the museum, and then also in Israeli Institute in Israel. They have another Septuagint there as well. But why not do that? If you're saying that this is the greatest historical moment that has ever happened to mankind, why didn't you start making backups? Why didn't you start making backups of all the footage? It's so easy to make copies of film. Make a digital transfer, whatever you have to do. If your technology is so advanced to get you to the moon, you should have advanced technology to back up all your stuff. Because you used a supercomputer to get you to the moon that is probably less than what we have on our phone today, but somehow you're able to get to the moon and you can't back up the footage. It's crazy, right? Let's see here. Get something more. See now, please. I didn't see what. Well, you can't change history when there's evidence lying around. Yeah, I don't know if it's evidence. You know what's funny? In Calgary, we have a museum, the science, I'll just call it, they call it the Science Center. This would have been in the 90s. Somebody had a moon rock on display in the museum or at the Science Center. And they announced it on the radio that somebody had stole the moon rock. And I was like, oh man, that's going to be worth something someday. And they said, but the problem is you can't tell the moon rock from one of our rocks. So you'll never know its authenticity because we can't tell the difference between a moon rock and our backyard rocks. So I'm like, okay, yeah, whatever. Like that it's just like, it's so stupid that it's like, then you start saying, well, the moon actually came out of the earth. That's why it looks exactly the same. Again, people just make up stuff because they don't want to believe what's in front of their eyes, that these rocks are just from the ground, from the earth. That's what they're putting on display because you can't prove it. You can't prove it either way. You can't do any testing. You can't say it's from the moon. That's what they're saying. It's crazy, right? I have the rock, Shane. Awesome. I do too. I have a whole bunch here just out in this parking lot. There's a whole bunch of moon rocks. Whole bunch of them. Because they don't want us to know the truth. Bottom line, exactly. Get me something on the sea, on the now, please. What does that mean? Let me get something more on this, on the now. Starlink only works from space like satellite phones. Yeah, satellite phones work really well, don't they? I see. Well, I guess you can't believe anything. Ah, there you go, my friend. That's what happens. Because as soon as you question NASA, they say you don't believe anything. Well, I believe in God. NASA does not believe in God. I would argue NASA believes more in the devil than they do God. So you can't use that with me and say, I believe because everyone's lying that I don't believe anything. No, I believe in God. I believe in Jesus Christ. I don't need to be snowed by NASA. I don't need to be snowed. I can tell you're bought in by NASA. But that's okay. That's okay. That's all right. There's weight on Earth. There's water at the end of the Earth. Yes, there's no spaces. It's water. Can't wait to see all these questions for sure. Why did they launch it from Earth? It's like so dumb. Leaving Earth, there's no weight. Weight is a major factor, 69. The smallest camera would be the Super 8, I guess. For every pound you lose on a rocket, it's larger, whatever. Okay, what else we got here? Let's see here. Nikon or Nixon. People want to see what they desire to see and disregarded the rest. Yeah, that's how we are. Let's see here. I think that's it because I got to take off here to go to church. But thanks a lot, guys, for watching. Like I said, we'll see you in about 4 hours. 3 o'clock mountains, 3:30 Mountain Standard Time. I'll be on live with Pete Garcia. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you guys in another video. Bye for now.